Hey, ADHDers and allies. Welcome to the ADHD and Me podcast. ADHD Girl here, coming to you from England, where the sun seems to have suddenly decided it really likes us for a change. So what's going on in today's episode? Come on, do the emotional with me, because we're talking about emotional regulation, something that comes hand in hand with having ADHD. And who better to talk to about emotional regulation than someone who has had a lot of first-hand experience before and after being diagnosed with ADHD. So if you've ever struggled to contain your emotions, go from 0 to 100 miles per hour in the space of 1 second flat, then this episode might be able to help you understand why and also what you might be able to do about it. Welcome to the podcast, Danielle. It's lovely to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to talk to you about this.
Oh, no worries at all. Would you like to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got to being where you are and what you're doing now?
Sure. My name's Danielle Sullivan. I'm very glad to be here, but I am an adult identified autistic ADHD. You know, when you get diagnosed as an adult and you have that list? Yeah, so that's me. But the pertinent ones, I think, are autism and ADHD. I was diagnosed in my early 30s when one of my kiddos was diagnosed, which I know is a pretty common story nowadays. And I started a podcast. I wanted to learn more and just be in community with other people who are going through the same thing. And that's the Neurodiverging podcast. And then from that, I've started a coaching career where I work with really neurodivergent people of all kinds all around the world, but we do especially focus on late identified folks and just help people create lives that work for them and are not based on what society thinks we should be doing, but are based on your personal values and your goals and your interest in life, your strengths. So that's what I do day to day. And emotional regulation is a big piece of what folks come in needing support with. I'm really excited about this topic.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I'm really excited about it too, because the neurodivergent people you work with also have something called, I think in America it's called seasonal depression, but over here it's seasonal affective disorder. And mine has actually lasted longer this year. Yeah. And that's really interfered with my emotional regulation. So I'm really excited for this topic, just to see if I can pick up any tips, really, as well.
I hope I can help. We'll see. Yeah, we also, I don't actually know. I work with people. One nice thing, it's really great to work with people all over the world. But I guess the negative thing is I forget what countries use which vocab for things. And then I end up saying, instead of the American way, I'll say it the British way or the Australian way, because I've just talked to somebody from there. So I don't remember what we call it, but we do have the seasonal depression. And also I know there's some research now on summer seasonal depression too. Wow. So some folks are affected in the winter with the light and vitamin D and all those things. And some folks are affected in the summer. Yeah, I was just reading a paper on it the other day because it does seem to be, I bump into a lot of people anyway in my niche who are struggling through summers as well as winters. But it is seasonal. It's not traditional depression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always describe it like I can tell when it comes, because with ADHD, there's a brain fog you get just naturally that comes with having ADHD. And then when my seasonal affective disorder starts, that brain fog just gets like even thicker, if that makes sense. And it becomes more so to the point where the mental energy it takes me to form a coherent thought and just be able to think straight is so much more than any other time of year.
It's a huge struggle. And we know from the research that ADHDers, so all ADHDers are individual, unique people. Just want to say that. So when I'm referring to a group, you listening, actually, yeah. But in general, we know that a lot of ADHDers have a tendency towards difficulty regulating our emotions, and also a tendency, like you said, to executive function issues, which include that sort of brain fog issue. And whenever anything in our lives happens on top of that, like another challenge, like a seasonal affective issue, or you're just really busy, or you haven't been sleeping, or any of those kinds of things that challenge your brains more, we see more emotional dysregulation and more executive function. It like snowballs. Yeah. It's really unfortunate, but it's also really interesting in how brains work in figuring out how can we support people to feel better even when life is a disaster. That's really the goal with emotional regulation work.
And I love how natural this conversation is from the get-go, because one of my next questions was going to be, why do you think that people with additional needs struggle more with emotional regulation? But I think you've touched upon it, haven't you, really?
Well, there's a couple of reasons, specifically to ADHDers. that we have a different brain function neurologically. So it's not just like we act differently, but like our physical brain structure and the chemicals are generated in our brains are different. We have so much research about it. There's 5 or 6 big differences. And that affects our lives and our interpretation of the world and how we behave and all sorts of things. And emotional regulation is implicated in those. And then the second big reason is what you were speaking to earlier, that we already have that brain fog and we already have challenges. Like there's things we're great at, but there's also things that are hard for us. So we're likely to be more stressed over other people, other groups who are not ADHD. And that stress creates more emotional dysregulation. Because if you I'm trying to think of an example. If you have a soundboard maybe, right, and you want to stay in the green, if it's loud in the background, your volume's already increased. So you have to adjust more to keep it in the green. And if something happens behind you or a kid comes in, it pops into red without you really having a lot of control over it, feels. So your background stress level is so much higher often that we're more likely to get emotionally dysregulated just from that. So.
Yeah. And it really opens you up, doesn't it, to the concept of, is it that we struggle more with emotional regulation, which I think there's definitely like a lot of research to suggest that. But also, is it the way that society interprets emotional regulation? Because I sometimes think the kind of things that we need to emotionally regulate necessarily the way that other people need to emotionally regulate.
Yeah, I think it's definitely social too. I think it's really important that there are things you can do as an individual that will make you feel better in your life. And also, at the same time, the structural challenges of being an ADHDer in this world are huge.
Oh, yeah.
The world was not created to support us. And so we are expected to uphold a kind of emotional regulation that is easier for other people than it is for us. And so there's all this pressure on us to do it. And we're inherently not really built to do it that way. If society was more open to alternative ways of presenting ourselves and being human in the world, there wouldn't be so much pressure on us. So it's definitely, I don't mean to say we should all individually be 100% responsible for being calm Zen people all the time. That's not reasonable or like reasonable expectations. And it's also not what we want. We want lots of kinds of people in this world. So we do need to be attuned to what are other people's expectations and do I care about them enough to stop feeling my feels?
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. And there's all sorts of other social things too. If you're a woman, you're supposed to emote in a certain way and it's culturally dependent, obviously. But if you're a man, you're supposed to emote in a certain way. If you're a certain racial background or ethnic background, emotions. So these are all cultural, right? And there's all these expectations in place. It's really hard to rise to those. And again, I would say not reasonable. You got to do what works for you. If your reactions are getting in the way of you having the life you want, that's one thing. And that we can work on. But if it's just like other people's judgments all the time and you feel okay, then maybe we just need to work on more setting boundaries and communicating with other people that I'm sorry you don't like me like this. And I can leave if you really want me to, whatever it is.
What is it really is a catch-22, isn't it? Because the kind of confidence it takes to forge your own path, and I completely agree with you, that's what we need to do. But the amount of energy that takes in a society, because a lot of us had childhoods and even extending through to adulthoods where we're constantly knocked down because we can't meet society's expectations. But then we're constantly trying to create our own path. And it's like a balancing act, isn't it, within that?
Absolutely. I think one way we refer to that in coaching is internalized ableism, that we have been taught through society and sometimes through very well-meaning parents and neighbors and friends that people with any kind of disability are worth less than people who are able-bodied or able-minded. And it's really hard to overcome that. And a lot of us, even though we don't think we believe it, once we start looking and talking about it, we realize, actually, I have internalized some of that stuff. Even though I think it's bunk, I still believe that I'm not worth as much.
Yeah, logically, you can think something's wrong and still be programmed to go along with it, can't you?
Yeah, but emotionally, it still harms you. So different people approach this in different ways. I think there's tons of different ways to approach that work, but I work in positive psychology, and positive psychology works on what are your personal values? What are your sets of strengths? What do you like doing? What do you enjoy? What do you feel you bring to the world? What's your purpose if you have one? Even if your purpose is to carve out your little garden and make it look really nice so that you can feed your kids or feed the squirrels, whatever it is. But like focusing on you individually and your needs and meeting those needs and your values and living those values. And when we do that, we get a lot of clarity because a lot of the world is pushing against other people's stuff. And that's good. We're in society. We want to be with other humans, but it means that our stuff gets covered up almost. And it's harder for us to remember, oh, actually, I don't care about this.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is not my value. And so when we return to, okay, what are your values? What are your beliefs? What's important to you? It makes decision making a lot easier for a lot of clients because I can look and say, okay, my values are community, learning, and joy. I don't know. I pulled those out of thin air. And then I can look at any decision I'm asked to make and say, does it further my community or my learning or my joy? No. Then maybe, not to say I'll never do that, but maybe it's not so much worth my effort. Maybe it's a lower priority. Obviously, living in the world requires paying bills, which does not further my learning or my joy.
Exactly.
But might further my community because if I have electricity, I can get on Zoom
Like all
with
these
you.
factors that contribute to help achieve your values.
Yeah. So digging into values really help. Did I
Yeah.
go too off topic there? Did I answer your question?
Yes,
Okay.
no, that, yeah, I thought it was quite a good rounded response.
Okay, good. I forgot what the question was. So okay, I'm glad.
One of the things I wanted to ask as well, like with ADHD, like comes a lot of anxiety. Particularly, I feel like, I don't want to like stereotype, but I feel like women with ADHD experience that more, just because I do think women, from a biophysiological point of view, are very much made to think. Our brains are like always on the go because they're programmed to, like, for example, raise a family and all that things. So we've got a lot of balls in the air, basically. And then obviously you have ADHD, which makes you think a bit faster, but not necessarily in a good way. And you've got even more balls in the air and you're trying to juggle them all. And like, that's what leads to the anxiety, isn't it? And also sometimes depression. How would you say that you relax as a person? What helps your emotional regulation?
Yeah. So I'll just say I didn't grow up knowing what emotional regulation is. And I didn't really
hard for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I just was it was the 80s too. So it was just named, I guess, as having tantrums, right? I had tantrums longer than I should have. And even as an adult, I had meltdowns that I thought were anxiety spikes or I don't know, period stuff. Because I was just taught like that this was normal. Like it was normal to just sometimes melt down. And then when I got diagnosed, I was like, oh,
Yeah,
that makes a lot more sense. But what I want to say is I've learned all of these techniques maybe in the past 5-10 years. So I just want to say that, preface everything by saying you can learn it any time in your life. I have clients who are identified in their 70s or 80s. You can still learn it. The ones I like are the really easy ones. So the ones they teach you, this is almost a cliche in the US therapy world. I don't know if it's the same where you are, but the check in with your 5 senses. Neon, 2 things you hear, 3 things you touch. Breathing, learning to deep breathe and just being able to take a couple deep breaths. You notice you're stressed or about to pop off. And I push my feet into the floor. That's an easy one for me, or clench my fist. I try to get back into the body. Yes. Yeah. These are all examples of mindfulness, right? When I say mindfulness to an ADHD audience, I get a lot of pushback, which is reasonable.
Yeah.
But mindfulness asks you to slow down. And I'll speak for myself. I do not want to slow down. I want to keep going. I'm into this, right? But slowing down is harder for us. And also, I would say necessary for regulation of the nervous system. Mindfulness doesn't mean you have to go do hours-long meditation staring at, I don't know, a light or a candle or a tree. You can do small things like breathing, grounding, the verbal exercises, counting how many people are wearing green in the restaurant, right? Those kinds of things are examples of mindfulness, but are little, and you can just practice them. And they're also great, I'll just say, to teach to other people, especially to kids. Kids can learn to stomp their feet. Kids can learn to breathe. Kids can learn to count green people without you having to explain the whole like framework. But what we're trying to do is be present in our body. A lot of us don't like to be in our bodies or are not good at being in our bodies. And certainly if you've experienced significant physical trauma of any kind, talk to a therapist. Don't just do random things you heard on the internet. But generally, mindfulness is a super safe and effective intervention for anxiety. And it can also help us recognize our feelings. So a lot of times we get upset and we like ADHDers often have that like big feelings and they happen very quickly and then they move very quickly. And it can leave us kind of feeling like we're reeling. And being able to take a breath and be like, wow, that was a big feeling can just give us a moment to reflect and let it move in a way that feels better and leaves us less anxious with all that energy moving. And then the last thing I'll just say is that a big part of emotional regulation for the ADHDers I work with is noticing the first little trigger that you are about to get overwhelmed before it happens, which is really hard. Because again, our emotions are fast. So we have to learn to recognize our emotions fast. And that's not always easy, especially if you have other diagnoses or you're just a person who is busy and it doesn't get to be in your body that much. So we do a lot of work on noticing, okay, like when I start to get anxious or upset or scared, where is it in the body? Where do I notice it? Is it pickles in your stomach? Do you start coughing? Do you feel heart palpitations? Are you like you can't see me because I'm on video, but are you like, you can hear it in my voice. Are you clenching your shoulders and your upper body like really hard? Those are things you can notice ahead of time and be like, oh, I'm about to go over. Okay, let me take a breath now, or let me ground now.
Yeah, I find it so interesting because I must make a confession that mindfulness I'm not very good at. I think it's because it makes me uncomfortable because I'm always looking to the next thing. And I think that's very typical ADHD. I'm always like, come on, let's go. One of the things that really helps me to switch off, and I know every ADHD is different, is listening to classical music.
Oh, that's great.
I went to a classical music festival, and actually, it was the first classical music concert I'd ever been to because I only realized in the last year that I really like classical music and it does wonders for my brain. And it was just an amazing experience because I was sat there thinking, I hope I like this and I'm not like sat here bored because it was my first experience of it. But as soon as the orchestra began to play, I was like, I can't even tell you, I nearly cried because it was just the first time that I'd had complete stillness, if that makes sense, in my brain.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is what normal people like feel like all the time.
Yeah. I've gotten better at stillness, but I'm still not good at it. Honestly, I know I'm a professional in this space, and I still think I will be doing this work for another 50 years. I will never actually be good at being still, but that doesn't mean we can't practice. And I do think it gets easier. Like just anything you practice, it's important to add reflection into your day. And that can be the journaling and or walking and talking with a friend, calling your friend on the phone. And also that sort of what you were speaking to. I heard something we often notice with ADHD is we have multiple levels of attention happening at once, right? So there's our inner voice is planning, it's doing, it's getting ready. Our part that's understanding the external environment is also doing something different, right? There's just like layers of doing happening in our brain.
Different contributing factors as well.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And so if you can find something that quiets one part of your brain, that leaves room for the other parts to do more reflective work. And if you can get that full stillness, that's incredible. Like kudos for finding something. I often, the same way some of us listen to music or a podcast when we're working to help us focus, it's the same thing. It's giving part of our brain a thing to do so that the rest of us can sit and write our paper or our client notes or, bake our cake or whatever we're doing.
Yeah, and I think with ADHD, it's about making something work for you as opposed to making something work for you, if that makes sense. Because a lot of these times, like you said, a lot of these things need to be adapted for us to be able to participate in them.
Yeah. I always tell clients we are scientists, we experiment, we try things, and then when they don't work, we don't get mad at ourselves, say, oh, I'm so stupid, oh, I should have been able to do it. We say, oh, okay, now I have good data about why that didn't work, and I can use that in the future to create something that will work better for me.
Such a different mind frame, isn't it? It's basically saying the problem isn't with me. Wasn't it Thomas Edison who said, I've not failed, I've just found 1,000 ways that don't work?
I think it was him. I should know, but yeah.
It was. I'm hoping it was, but I've said it.
No, I'm pretty sure you're right. We'll find out in comments, I'm sure, to the podcast. But I think that mindset is exactly right on that. It's so easy to feel like we're failing as individuals and we are being told by society that we're constantly failing. So it's reinforced, unfortunately. But that's why it's important that we know that we're actually trying stuff. We're experimenting. Thomas Edison, who I know was a terrible guy, but he did figure out the light bulb. And we have light bulbs the way we do now if he'd given up on 999. And you deserve a life that is as good as we can get it in the society we have, right? So if it's not working, that doesn't mean you're failing. It just means like you need to experiment a little bit more. Maybe you need some other friendly scientists to support you. Maybe you need creativity from a friend.
When I was at university, I did a module on the philosophy of childhood studies, which sounds like it's basically like the evolution of how we are the way we are and how we view children. And one of the things I learned through doing my assignment on a pioneer who opened the first primary school in England was that it's free thinkers and people who have a different mind kind of sets that end up making those progressive changes that change the world. So it's a bit of a catch-22 because if you think about it, society needs people like us because we're the ones who are going to have those progressive ideas. But then at the same time, society isn't built for us. So it's, yeah.
Yeah. In the autism community, we often make fun of the fact that autistic people are stereotyped as black and white binary thinkers. And actually, often we find that it's society who is, no, you have to do it this way.
Yes.
And it's an interesting sort of conflict between what the expectation is and what's actually happening. And I do think as neurodivergent people in general, we need to accept that we have a hard lot. Like, we're supposed to be doing things a certain way. We're never going to be able to do it a certain way. So at some point, I personally, this is my personal approach, is to just throw my hands up in the air and be like, I'm just going to do what works for me as best I can and try to make the lives of my people better and try to be in community with my people. And hopefully that affects change outward. I do believe that there's a big space for modeling, that if we live the way we want others to live, that we don't have to teach didactically, but that we can offer them insights into how life is possible when you build it in a way that works for you.
Yeah, and it's, I think Charles Dickens, I love a good quote. So I think Charles Dickens was the one who said, you must be the change you want to see in the world. I think it was him. Anyway, I'm going to find out after this podcast that I've got quoted completely the wrong people, but at least
you come in and re-record over that part. Yeah. Now, I'm very bad at remembering where things came from originally. I take copious notes whenever I'm doing a workshop but that quote really does speak to me, that you have to, no one else is going to lead your life for you. You have to lead your life, right? You're driving the car. So just, you decide where you want to go. I know the roads are there and you might be told to take the highway, but you can go whatever way you want.
Yeah.
The roads still exist.
And briefly, like, it must have been, I know you've already touched upon it, but not knowing why you were different, but obviously thinking it different. I was very lucky in some ways because I presented like a boy with ADHD. I was very boisterous, very distractful. I couldn't mask, which led to me getting diagnosed at the age of 10. But even though I was diagnosed at the age of 10, it's still obviously been a journey in terms of learning this stuff. I'm still learning about emotional regulation and things like that. Just briefly, can you tell us like what it was to grow up with knowing that you couldn't control yourself in the way that society wanted you to? But it must have been tricky, right? And difficult.
Yeah. So I will say that unfortunately, I have a significant amount of trauma that's impacted my memory. And so I can't always remember my childhood the way I would like to, the way I think other people would like to. What I can say is I was the eldest daughter in an Italian-Irish family in the US. And so there were a lot of kind of social expectations around behavior and around politeness and feminine. And I was always bad at them. I can be pretty polite. That's not a part of a problem. But I meant more about like femininity. I was, I think, expected to take care of my siblings to an extent. I wasn't deeply parentified. And my parents were good parents. They didn't have any knowledge about neurodiversity either. So part of it was just this expectation that I do well in school and go through my life with huge sensory challenges that I was told were normal for everybody, and I just needed to suck it up.
Yeah, and I think that's a generation thing as well, isn't it?
I think so.
Get on with it, no excuses.
Get on with it. Yeah, get on with it. And that was really what I internalized anyway. And who knows where I internalized it from, but it was just like you push through. And what would happen, of course, is I'd get constantly overwhelmed by sensory stuff, by emotional. I also am alexithymic, which is more relevant to autistic folks, but I don't actually identify emotions readily. I have to think really hard. And I've created like a whole system of figuring out what I'm feeling when. But at the time, I didn't identify emotions hardly at all. So I would get upset seemingly out of nowhere and then be judged for it because I didn't know what was coming. I would get upset at the mall or at school or in church or somewhere in public. And then I would be judged by it. And again, my parents were good parents, but it was just like, why, Danielle? Like, why are you freaking out now? Like, literally nothing happened because they didn't see the several hours to days of stress that I had been accumulating and didn't know how to
burnout as well, honestly. A lot of burnout.
In retrospect, I experienced a lot of burnout as a child. And again, it was just not recognized for what it was. Nobody had the tools.
And that's something that not a lot of people speak about, isn't it? The burnout that comes with having it. Because what a lot of people know is that obviously with ADHD, you've got a really fast brain. Like, and even with autism, like, you know, your brain can be working really super fast. But what people don't realize is that leads to crashing quite a lot of the time, like more regularly than normal people.
Yeah. And I think up until I was diagnosed, I had meltdowns probably daily. I just didn't recognize that they were meltdowns. I'm a woman with autism. I was misdiagnosed like 5 times with bipolar, with borderline, with high anxiety, with whatever. And some of those are accurate and lots of them are not because it's autism. That's what it is. So my profile is different. But once it was identified, then I could be like, oh, this is actually normal. It just reframed the entire experience for me as, of course, I'm crashing. I'm autistic. I don't have the tools that I thought I had. And it really did require a rebuilding of my personal understanding of myself from the ground up. Of I thought I could do this. Maybe I can't. But I can do these other things that I didn't realize I could do. And just reconfiguring how I
expectations, isn't it? How you view yourself as a person and your identity and the ableism aspect as well.
Oh my gosh, it's huge. Because I really viewed myself as a broken neurotypical person. And now I'm 100% a doing pretty well autistic adult. Do I have 100% good days? No. Are the days radically better? And do I feel a lot better about my capabilities and about my contributing to my community in a productive and useful way? 100% better. And some of that is I learned skills, but a lot of it was just understanding ableism better. Yeah.
And in closing, I feel like we could talk about this so much more, but unfortunately, there's only so much time we have. But in closing, I did check out your website for your coaching. I thought it was such a lovely layout and very clear and easy to access. Do you want to tell people what your website is, just like in case they want to look up the coaching aspect?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm at neurodiverging.com with the gerund at the end. And my name's Danielle Sullivan, so you can Google. We have a podcast. We offer coaching, individual coaching and parent coaching around the world virtually. And we would love to have you in our community. We also do lots of free events if you look at our homepage. So come to a free event, say hi. I'd love to meet you.
That's fab. And thank you so much. I think we've done a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but it's been amazing, like in terms of, I think we've got a lot of the important stuff in there. I don't know about you, but that conversation made me feel so validated. Is it any wonder we have such big emotions that are difficult to manage when our brains basically have trouble processing pretty much anything? Which once again reminds us of the point of being kind to ourselves. It's not our fault that our brains are built differently, that we have so many big emotions, but what we do with them, and more importantly, how we see ourselves through them and with them, that's up to us. Catch you next time, ADHDers and allies, where I talk to a scientist about the facts when it comes to physiological aspects of ADHD.